Alright, so we're going to start off with our first piece. So how are you as a person?
Good. I felt like testing went really well, and it gave me like the space that I needed for grading. I was a lot less stressed out this time with grading, just having done it before and like knowing sort of like the volume of what was going to be expected, so that I could knock it out before I was completely finished, before I left work on Friday and got to enjoy my weekend IA free. So that was really great.
How was it with the group of people from everywhere kind of working?
It's really good. I feel like the science teachers are really driven to be efficient in the grading, and we campaign pretty hard to have less but like more meaningful open response questions between IA1 and IA2, and so I think we went from having 8 open response questions to having 4. So that made a significant difference in like student success and also like our ability to just grade it.
Got you. So how are you? Do you feel like you're keeping a balance? You know, the things we talked about before that you love to do. How's that going?
It's getting better. I know that like being able to look at trimester 3 and like see the finish line and know that if I set myself up to like plan ahead, then I can actually enjoy myself this spring and not spend it being completely stressed out. So it's feeling good.
Alright, so let's go ahead and go through your 2x2 form.
So looking at things that I think I'm doing well, I'm continuing to push myself, but I think that my daily materials are already at a good place. I think that they are like well thought out and aligned to the objectives so that students can be successful. And then I've gotten to a place, one of my classes had an amazing silent first 3 today, and that just feels really good when we can start class calmly. I mean, we have other things that we're working on, but that first chunk of time is feeling a lot more manageable and a lot calmer and a lot more like student owned, where I'm not having to remind students of every single expectation. I'm still working on the swift and consistent consequences. I just feel like my style is to put students on stage a little bit more when I'm giving consequences, and it's causing a lot more problems than it is fixing them. So I just really want to hold myself accountable and know that I'm giving equitable consequences that students feel are private and honoring of where they are. And then also just continuing to plan ahead. I do have one more unit that I've never taught before, so it'll be my first time teaching it, so I really want to spend some time, and it's been nice having like the last 2 PD days, but spend some time working with Emily to make sure that we have a really solid plan so that we both know what we're doing and it's not causing more stress just for the planning piece.
Okay. We're going to move on to the next piece.
So I just really continue to be really impressed with your communication. I think that the speed of feedback and the way that you like say you're going to do something and then you communicate like, okay, I said I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it, and then like similarly just like the accountability. Like I know that I had like a super rough day in class and like I totally slipped my mind that you were going to come and support me in that class, and it just feels really good when you walk in and it's like, Anthony's got my back. Like, I know this class is kind of a rough spot, but like together we're gonna get there, because you're just really, you really hold yourself and students and me accountable, and I appreciate that.
Appreciate you too.
I'm still working on building relationships. I think that, you know, even the PD that we had on Monday, I think, about building relationships with students that have some like more significant things going on in their lives was really helpful for me. I picked up teaching with love and logic again over the weekend and continuing to work on that. But just like I see you like in relationship with students, but you know, like I don't always know like the backstory. So like like how do you get there? And I think that's like really what I want to continue to work on in our practice.
Okay. Alright, so I'm gonna give you feedback as well, and I think definitely we can talk about today some things on like how to actually build, or how I actually tend to do it. But I think everyone's different on like how to go about that approach. But I think we're very similar, so we'll get there.
Okay.
So going back to just some feedback. So again, I feel like strong areas are, again, planning. You know, you make sure that one, you're co-planning with yourselves in Burkhart is really strong. All right. Anyway, no, but you're planning. Like honestly, like it's been very tight throughout the entire year. Like, and then when I think about like your exit tickets and like your planning pieces in regards to like where you're trying to get students, that's happening. Also look at data. Like, I don't know, I was really excited today as well when I walked in the classroom and I saw, you had students really reflecting about their practice in regards to like how they did on their IA, and you had your standards very clearly laid out for them to see the skills that, hey, I did kind of okay with this one, and this one I did really strong, and for them to be able to make that connection. So again, that's been the constant throughout this year, and I think that's making a huge stride with your students and investment. Then also I would say, sorry, I'm just like all over the
You're
place. Your willingness to continue to grow as a leader, like that has been the consistent piece throughout the year as well, and you always look for feedback and look for ways to continue to get better. So that are two huge strengths for you. And so areas of growth is very similar to what you talked about, which is giving the specific, like very swift, consistent consequences. So we'll practice that today. And then also making sure that we are providing greater access to all students, so like the differentiation piece. So we'll also go into that today. And I know previously, from our last session, I gave you a couple resources to check on blended learning, and then also we'll go ahead and readjust and do a role play today. Okay. All right. So go.
We had a summative and then we had IAs. But like that's what we were analyzing today was the students' summatives, and I didn't get to do it in 703 because they terrible.
Got you.
But we did a lot of celebrations in the other classes, and celebrated. I want to do move towards more celebrations for students. So we celebrated students who get 5% growth between their Unit 5 and their Unit 6 summative, and then also celebrated students that made 5% or more growth between IA1 and IA2. And we're gonna have a growth chain. Like we made a paper chain in my first two classes, and we're gonna have like a class versus class competition, because I know that like the kids all in different classes are all at different levels, but everyone can make growth. Like that's something that everyone can do. And so seeing that like growth chain, and that it's like, it's okay wherever your target is, we're all like getting closer to that with this chain. And so like honestly for the Unit 6, like there wasn't a single standard that I need to reteach on a class basis. So I'm actually gonna base some of my reteaching off of things that were on the IA2 that I know are going to be on IA3, and continuing to work on some of those fluency pieces, because most of the things that kids miss, it's just like a memorization kind of thing. If they just need to know that the sun's energy fuels all weather on Earth, and the answer is always going to be the sun. Like however they phrase the question, it's going to be the sun, and they just need to know that. And there's a couple of like small pockets of students that don't know that.
You talked about that today in class. Like, hey, I mean, I know you guys know these particular pieces, but then also like the framing of how they work too. And it was good that you actually went back over that and like allowed them to be able to like make those connections. Like, oh, like that.
They all were super mad that we were doing it, but they didn't get it right on the test. So I think that that's a really important skill. That's something that Emily and I both identified as something that we want to continue to work on, is test taking strategies, because a lot of times we've done a great job of teaching it in class, and we've retaught it and taught it again, but then when we give them a formative or a summative, they actually don't understand what the question is asking. And so being able to teach them those skills about how do I break down a question, how do I know that I'm answering, that I'm hitting the target with what my answer is something that we want to continue to work on, especially with our high population of ELL students who maybe just have an access problem.
And so as we're moving towards the small group kind of learning model, this is a great opportunity for you to continue to kind of like work on those fine skills and look at that. So perfect.
Okay, so moving forward, I think we've talked before, but continuing to build on like sweating the details and really making sure that I'm sweating the details from the beginning to end of class, especially around like giving the consequences and not trying to ignore the consequences or ignore when a kid needs a consequence. And because I'm seeing it balloon into bigger problems. So working on, for my school goal, sweating the details, and then my personalized goal, just continuing to work on that balance of using my time really wisely at school to get planned ahead so that I can enjoy my spring and not have the anxiety of planning on top of it. Specifically, like the student actions that I've set is I want to see like the sweating the details to start when kids walk in the door. So building investment in do now and driving. I think we're at like around 75% now do now completion, but driving to like all students doing the do now every single time. I'm still working on getting students in uniform. And then the biggest compliance issue that I'm having from students is the call outs. And a lot of times I'm ignoring it, hoping that it goes away, but it's not been going away. So I want to use the sweating the details like strategy to hold kids accountable for that action. I want to really push myself to continue to give clear directions so that I know that the expectation has been clearly given and it's not a, well, I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing thing from a student, and then really tighten up my follow-up with students so that I'm getting to them quicker so that we can actually have a conversation about the misbehavior and set them back on a course to be successful for the rest of class.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and just create our action steps together, which we've already clearly said. We want to make sure that we are, one, making sure that we're giving clear, consistent expectations,
right.
And then we're going to do some access pieces to help with differentiation,
right,
as well. All right. So let's go ahead and get there. Boom. All right. So before, you got a video to watch on technique number 40 and teach like a champion, which is sweating the details. What was kind of your takeaways from that?
I believe in holding a tight front line of class, so I appreciated that they said that really is like the foundation, and especially when we're dealing with 12 and 13-year-olds, like they want to test the rules, and when you give them an opportunity to test it, then they just continue to like push and prod and find those gaps until like they get there, I guess. And so like knowing that because students are going to test the rules as is like developmentally appropriate, making sure that my systems are in place to know like when that happens, instead of me being like, oh, I'm gonna either ignore it or like call out across the room, like having clear systems in place for me so that I can sweat the details. And then also I really do like the idea of giving a student the job of like being my clicker or whatever, so that if I do need to like walk away from my computer and have a conversation with a student, that the flow of the classroom doesn't grind to a dead halt, that a student can still like advance the slide and I can be giving instructions from a different part of the room.
So from this particular point, we're actually going to do a quick role play.
Okay.
And so previously we went over a few steps that our entire grade level has been working on to make sure that we are very consistent in how we're interacting with our students. And so we'll go ahead and role play. I know previously we also talked about I'll actually play one of your students who kind of usually shouts out. And I know that was an area we talked about. Like,
right.
What do we do when so-and-so continues to just shout out
right.
and gets angry and frustrated? Okay. And
totally.
So I don't know, in that particular moment, do you remember what we talked about, what we should do? And what did the video talk about, what we should do?
Right. So I really appreciated how we talked about setting a goal to use like economy of language, and then giving students the space that they need to make the right choice instead of standing and hovering over them. I feel like that sometimes is like, I'm just going to stand here and watch for you to make another mistake, and giving students a little bit of grace by like, this is what I saw, this is what I need you to do, okay, now I'm going to step back, and when you are doing it, like I can give you a thumbs up from across the room or something to let you know that I am seeing it, but I'm not hovering over you and making you feel, I feel like a lot of our kids have stress around that.
So quick, making sure that it's straightforward, keep moving on with lesson, and then follow through. So right on. Okay, so I'll start off by being, I don't know, I'm student Sure, I'll just give me a day.
You can be Isaiah.
I'll be
today.
Isaiah, okay. So Isaiah. And so right now, you're teaching a lesson.
Do you want me to stand
and
up?
you give options. You're fine.
Okay.
So just act like you're teaching your lesson, and then just like earlier today when you're giving your different categories or options, I'm going to do some things, just like for the Isaiah.
Okay. Awesome, scholars. We're going to go ahead and cold call for the next answer, so I'm not looking for hands. I'm going to be calling on students who are ready to go. You're looking around the room for my first student. Okay, Artemis, what do you got? Okay, writing it down. Okay, Isaiah, what do you got?
I don't know. I don't have it.
Okay, Isaiah, why don't you go ahead and phone a friend so we can get you support with that? Why don't you call on Tomas? He has his hand raised.
Tomas.
Okay, so Tomas said the answer was B. What do you think it is, Isaiah?
It was C.
Okay. Isaiah, I'm going to come back to you. Let's go ahead and get some support from another student. Ashante, can you come on up here and be my awesome student leader to help out with the front of the room?
Why she gotta be the one?
So, Isaiah, I can see that you're struggling in class today. Right now, you've lost a point for integrity because you weren't showing our classroom norm of having our voice off when another student is speaking. I know you can get back on track and be successful. Make sure that your voice is off and you're taking notes with the rest of the scholars. Okay, awesome job. Thank you, Ashante.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
So, how do you think you did in that particular piece? What particular step did you take?
So I think like connecting the behavior to a core value is important for students to learn, like when we say like you need to show integrity, what does it look like to show integrity? What does it look like to not show integrity or any of our other core values? I think that again, like sometimes I just struggle to like kind of get to a point where I can get close to the student and give that consequence. And it just sometimes feels like I feel like I see you over there. I want to get to you, but like I also just really care about these other 29 kids who are with me, and so like balancing that equity of like I want every kid to be learning, and I get that this kid is distracting, but how do I do it in a way that continues the flow of class?
And so one push I would say is making sure that while you're giving your clear expectations, also positive narration. So like you do that very, very well. So I think that also provides that equity in your class, right? Because so-and-so's doing this, but then, you know, you gave that expectation and now you're positively narrating these other groups. Like, hey, you know, so-and-so is, or table group number, whatever, like the way that you're tracking, da-da-da, as I'm walking over here, whatever, or give them an assignment or something to do really quick, try and talk to the person about da-da-da-da while you go in and really talk with him really quick. Like sometimes some things may have to just happen sometimes very spontaneous just to kind of help support that, but like, and get it back on track. Okay, so now I'm going to keep pushing. And I'm going to continue to push until we get to cool down. And so I'm going to go ahead and be, let's see, what's another good one? Sarai. Let's do Sarai today.
So you want to start at the beginning from like the initial.
Yep. I'm just going to do normal.
Okay. Awesome job, scholars. Let's go ahead and take our pencils up, writing our notes on our board, making sure that you're making your paper look just like my board.
Making us do something.
I see Betty over there making sure her pencil is moving. I appreciate that Isaiah has his voice off and his eyes up here. I'm waiting on one more scholar to have her voice off and her eyes up here. Awesome job. I'm coming around to check in with everyone on their notes.
I don't feel like doing it.
Sarai, I can see that you're struggling today. Right now you've lost a point for doing your best because your pencil wasn't moving with the rest of the class. I really want you to be successful on our mastery check at the end of class. So let's make sure we're getting our notes down. Go ahead and pick up your pencil.
But I don't want to do it.
I understand. The expectation is that your pencil is up and you're writing notes. I'll follow back up in a minute. Okay, awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Joe's there.
I'm doing this.
Thank you, Aixa.
Oh.
Looking good. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. I really appreciate the doing your best that Joseph is showing. His pencil has been moving the whole time.
La 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 la.
Okay, Sarai. So at this point, you have earned a reflection to let you know that you're not on track for doing your best today in class. I really want you to take this as an opportunity to let me know what's going on in class and set some goals so I can better support you throughout the rest of science. I want you to be successful. You have 3 minutes to fill this out, and I'm going to come back and check with you.
Why I gotta do this?
Awesome job. Moving on to our next slide. Getting there. Thank you, Joe. Awesome, Isai. Making sure you have all those notes written down. So thank you very much for setting your goals today. I'm going to go ahead and hold on to this, and we're going to follow up at the end of class about your goal of showing respect and making sure that you're doing your best with all of your notes. Let's go ahead and get back on track. Make sure that your pencil is up and that you're making your paper look just like my board. I know you can do it.
Stop there. So, feedback. How do you think? What particular steps did you take there?
I think that, again, the positive narration helps. I think it's developmentally appropriate for students to hear what other students are getting positive praise for, and it also makes the balance of like the negative to positive feel like, oh, well, she's not always just like hounding on me. Like, listen to all these other students who are getting praise, so that then when I'm checking in with one student, it's like, okay, like all these other students are being awesome. I know that you could be awesome too. And so that it feels like my teacher is setting me up for success instead of my teacher is picking on me or some other negative feeling.
So one thing I would say, once you have now followed up with that conversation with her, throughout the rest of class, just make sure you're checking in with her maybe a little bit more frequently. Say, hey, okay, I remember your 2 goals so far. You're doing a really awesome job.
Right.
Let's continue to stay on track. So far, you're on track for a yes. Okay, so like that piece will continue to help her hear the positive and maybe move her away from that that angry piece that sometimes she can just get really frustrated because she's kind of seeking out more attention. And so we'll go ahead and continue to try that out for the next time.
Okay.
And then so next we'll go ahead and move into daily access. We talked about wanting to get some blended learning in with that last group of students, specifically because we have very different needs throughout that class, and so we want to make sure we're really supporting them, even though you are supporting them, but like at a differentiated level. Okay, so you watched a couple of videos we sent last week. What was some kind of some feedback or some key takeaways you took from those videos? Yeah,
so I just really, I've been in the world of differentiation before. I think that the idea that like this like actual way the differentiation is taking place and the idea of like blended learning was something that was like familiar but not something that I was really comfortable with. So I just really appreciated the teachers like breaking down like blended learning is when like some students are doing either an activity or a digital access point, and then another group of students are working with a teacher or in small groups, like the actual like what it looks like in a classroom. I also really appreciated the like automaticity of the student actions, and this is something that was obviously happening in these classrooms, and that it wasn't like, hey, you're failing science, get over here and work with me. Like there was like a data piece or a like way that the teacher said like, okay, if you got a 60% on this mastery check, I'm not gonna like list out your names, you know who you are, come work with me. If you got a 70%, go work on this extension activity. And then students got up, switched, so that there was like really strong student accountability, and you could tell that the classes that it worked well in had like really strong management of those pieces. I think like some of the things that I was like a little worried about is like it looks like a lot of these teachers had prepared a lot of materials to like they had pre-planned them so then they could like push them out to the students. So like you have a high load for like the preparation, but maybe like less in class because you have smaller students to work with so that you can be more targeted. But then like one of my concerns was what happens when one of the independent students struggle. If like this is my core kids that I'm working with, like what happens when the other kids need help? Like how do I divide that? And just like general curiosity about what programs are already available. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of masterful teachers who are doing this well. Like I would like to know how I can get some access to that. Those two, I saw that,
Okay.
which I think are great, yeah. And then just the ability to gather data to see like sort of like anecdotal data from a student group, or even like then coming back together and doing some sort of mastery check, a whole group, and just like really being meaningful about following through with data.
Yep. And so we're actually going to take it from from what we see in the videos. So it's more on like a where we're going to
Right.
get.
Right.
So we're going to take it slow. Okay.
Okay.
And I think the biggest piece here is like you already have very clear structures in your class in regards to like, all right, I'm providing access to do now. You know, I'm going to model for you with Exemplar. You usually use media within your lessons to really make sure students are connecting. And then I think where this comes to play is in the independent practice time. Mm-hmm. So if we're thinking about if I'm looking at my goal, okay, how can I truly get students there a lot quicker? So like, boom, I'm a model for them, and then I'm going to also provide, maybe we have one group where they watch your media piece, and they know they're going to switch to the other group where they're now going to move into independent practice piece. But while those two groups are moving, you can also pull in that third group. Like, hey, this group from IA that I know you guys maybe you have struggled or didn't do as well in these particular areas, so I'm going to pull you. Or from the last exit ticket, I'm just going to pull you, few students. But the goal is like while they're doing independent work that they don't need you for specifically, because that's, if we're trying to really build higher ratio and really build in that higher level of like blooms and like the DOKs we talked about, is like we got to get them to a point where they're actually doing a lot of work and grappling with it, and it may not be easy, and sometimes, you know, they may need your help, but they know that you're going to give them that help when they come to you in that small group setting. And so I would say, again, a really quick mini lesson, move them to independent practice to grapple with the work, and let them know you're going to be pulling small groups to help support them.
Right.
And we can start off with that.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, I like the idea of 3 groups. I think that makes it feel less like
playing a whole lot.
Well, yeah, it also feels a lot less like, oh, these are the smart kids that get to go work over here, and you guys are struggling, so you have to come to me. It feels more like, no, these are the 3 things that we're doing, and you're going to have like an opportunity to possibly do all 3 of those things, but like I'm going to start with the kids that maybe need a greater access to the information. I like that.
Or it could even be 2 groups. It could be like the main group, you guys are doing blank, blank, and blank. You make it very clear that's what they're working on, and while you're working on this piece, I'm pulling in groups.
Right.
And you have a time limit for each. You just pull them in, work with them on, and to see where their level at specifically with that skill that they're working on, or any other skills that you need to continue to build to work with them on. And for some groups, it may be a little bit more than others, like you said. And so, how do you feel with trying that next week after the next time we meet?
Yeah, I definitely want to try it. I think that this our unit that we're in right now is physics, and it's a really heavy math unit. So I already can see students struggling with the foundational math pieces. So I think it would be a really great way to, like, our kids need more math support. So I think it makes sense to help them in this way, like especially starting in this unit. And then there's also like some really cool online simulations and things that I think can also help kids to conceptually see what the math is actually doing in terms of the physics things. So I've already found some really great online resources that I want to help support our students, while I'm also like trying to help really lean in with the math pieces.
Got you. And so you also talked about a couple of resources. One I know you pointed to was Khan Academy. And I think next time, let's just make our meeting a meeting that we can plan together, and maybe we can bring in your next like physics lesson that you'll teach the week after or the next day, and then we can just go through, look at some resources. We can kind of role play how we want to do the transitions.
Definitely.
Like role play how we want to do all the particular activities, and even think about the differentiated aspect of like what students are we choosing, why are we choosing these students, and what skills.
Definitely.
Does that work? Okay.
That sounds great.
So let's do that for our next action step. And so for this time, we won't have any particular videos to watch. We'll focus on these 2 skills.
Okay.
And that's what we'll do. How do you feel about these two goals?
That sounds good. I
Okay.
think that these two to get like work well in concert to help my classroom feel like a better managed. Learning is joyful.
Alrighty. And so, can you just go ahead and repeat back what are our action steps for tomorrow and our action steps for next week?
So moving in tomorrow, I'm going to really continue to prioritize sweating the details, making sure that I'm giving those clear, swift, consistent consequences to students. And then moving into next week, I'm really excited for us to co-plan some blended learning opportunities for students and make sure that I'm looking for ways to improve access for the information for all students to gain.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Okay.